Now, welcome. So, a little bit of GAA talk, a little bit of football talk for you today, long overdue. Happy to say in studio we have Conán Doherty. Conán, hello.
Hello, Joe.
Colm Keys.
Hello, Joe.
He's got that Congress excitement. You can see it in his face. Just a little frisson of just sitting up a bit straighter. Loves a bit of Congress. Jarlath Burns' successor, interestingly, will be voted on this weekend. And Frank Roche, long overdue. You're very welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much, Joe. I have a sad face because I'm not going to Congress.
Listen, you can't get all the big gigs. Our GA podcast coverage is sponsored by AIB, proud sponsors of Club and County. AIB proudly celebrate the joy, dedication and support that lies at the heart of Gaelic games in every community and player across the nation. We will get to Congress because there are several interesting motions. There is a protest planned for the morning, Sunday I think, and like I said, Jarlath Burns' successor will be named. No pressure on following Jarlath Burns, so we'll see how the candidates stack up. Can we start with a bit of action on the field? Can we start with Dublin? I'm very curious about this Dublin situation. We haven't really talked about them on the show too much. So Ger Brennan has assessed 130 players from 36 clubs, divisions 1 through 4. Sean Hussey, part of our team outside, got some great stats on how they've gone so far. There are 4 games where they've had one win. 32 players have featured in these 4 games. They've had 7 debutants: Paddy White, Jack Lundy, Kevin Stevenson, Charlie McMorrow, Joe Quigley, Owen Kennedy and Robert Shaw. They have had 5 players start every game. Brian Howard, supposedly being culled for a while, but he seems to have started every game. 5 players every game. Brian Howard, Paddy Small, Davy Byrne, Nathan Doran, who marked Clifford at the weekend, came off in the first half in the yellow, and Owen Merchant. And then here's another interesting stat for you. This Dublin team who last year refused, almost on a point of principle, to kick 2-pointers. In their 4 games so far, only 4 players have scored 2-pointers. And they're the kind of the older generation. Cormac Costello, Kilkenny, Con with 4 of them, and Paddy Small. So 3 league defeats from 4. And against Kerry at the weekend, Dublin 110, Kerry 116, a late goal for Dublin. The scoreline flattered them. I didn't get to see this game, Colm, but anyone I've talked to, when you ask them what was the Dublin-Kerry game like in Croke Park, you kind of get these vacant stares, PTSD. Like it was really bad.
Almost disbelief, Joe, that a game can be as poor as that under the new rules. But they are out there. They're still out there.
You wouldn't think it'd be Dublin-Kerry under lights at Croke
You
Park.
wouldn't. They normally produce something, but this was a really slow-moving. Kerry came up just to build points, no more. And every time Dublin got within touching distance of them, they went off again. They got a goal late on through Peadar O'Coffey Byrne, and Kerry were able to go down. Tom O'Sullivan, with his trademark score, was on the field outside of the left, and that really did for the game. Dublin were going chasing. They were chasing goals at the end. They could have built maybe 2-pointers. You mentioned the 2-pointers there. They've scored 7. It hasn't been for the want of trying in all their games, because they've had over 30 attempts and they've come up with 7.
So only 4 players have scored 30 attempts.
They are not a team of long-distance shooters.
So someone said to me, who was at the game as well, they're not, like, there's a lack of dynamism to them, but they're also not like a kicking team, like a passing kicking team, which is kind of something you would have thought Dublin traditionally could have done.
And there's no coherence to anything they're doing. Like I still believe they have as much 2-point shooters as anybody else, but this idea of just going up and taking shots, like, that's not how you do it. Everybody else is manufacturing 2-point efforts. They're manufacturing space for somebody to have space around the arc. Dublin, for example, a very basic tactic now that everybody's using is get into the full forward line, send 5 players in there, create space outside, 1-on-1s or 2-point efforts. Dublin don't do that. Everybody just camps around the outside. So there's a real hangover from the Desi Farrell era, which, you know, obviously was successful. But then when the game changed, Dublin didn't really change, because it's like, this is going well. Let's not mess anything up. And now what you're having is a static. You're saying they're not kicking it. They're not moving players around positionally. They're not moving defences around, which is what you have to do and everybody else is doing. And they're just sort of left behind at the minute. But I'm still convinced they have way better players than what we're seeing and what everybody's sort of suggesting. And they have way more options.
As we said here a few weeks ago, they need everybody, And now they don't have Con O'Callaghan once again.
Yeah.
And in years that they have fallen down, in 2022, Con wasn't there for the closing stages. He was obviously back for 23, but he wasn't there for the closing stages last year. Only came off the bench against Tyrone. So he's missing. Bear in mind, the last time Dublin and Kerry played in Croke Park in a league game, he scores a hat-trick. He's not playing last weekend. He is absolutely pivotal, more so than he ever was to this Dublin team. And even Cormac Costello not being involved. They're now without a free taker. That's a real concern now. Con O'Callaghan had been taking frees off the ground, out of his hands. Cormac Costello would also take frees. They're not in the Dean Rock, Stephen Cluxton measurements for conversion, anything like that, but they're the next best options that they have, and now they may not have them for the weekend again.
Frank, I'm conscious with the 1 win in 4. Armagh, Galway also have won in 4, and we're not having a kind of state of the nation crisis talks about them today. So maybe we're being a touch harsh in Dublin because they are obviously in transition. Or are we? I mean, is this looking very ominous for Ger Brennan?
Well, in the short term, I think it is looking quite ominous. I mean, if they lose to Roscommon this weekend, I think they'll be relegated. I just don't envisage them getting enough points from their last 2 matches against Armagh and Galway, who are also 2 teams under pressure for results. But I don't think it's the results per se, it's the performance graph behind it. Against Monaghan, they won that game and were quite lucky to win it, but they were cut open for numerous goal chances. And it was almost as if against Kerry, the reaction was, okay, we've issues to resolve there in our defence. And they just sat back and tried to clog up the space. And that kind of partly contributed to the Boarfest we had, where nothing seemed to happen for 10 minutes at a time. But in doing that, they lost something going the other way. And it's interesting you mentioned about the 2-pointers. Mayo were notoriously bad when it came to 2-pointers last summer. They kicked 3 in 6 championship matches. Last Sunday in Clones, they kicked 6 in 1 game. Now, there's a win factor at play. Of course there is. But they were taking their shots. It wasn't just they were taking their shots, but there was one I can remember in the first half. I think it was Jack Carney scored it. But Mayo engineered the space. They had the ball inside, worked it back out to Jack Carney, who's sitting on the edge of the arc in a 10-yard pocket of space. And he got the score. And it was created that way. So you can see that they're a team who are thinking that way now. There probably hasn't been enough evidence that Dublin are, and that's I'd say reflected in the number of 2-point misses they've had as well.
And this great scouring that Ger Brennan did, because I think there was probably a degree of excitement maybe if you're a Dublin fan. 130 players, we have Kieran Whelan amongst others managing teams, and we're going to scour this huge population for players. There'll surely turn up a player or two. I mentioned 7 debutants. Has anyone reached out and grabbed attention? Is there a new generation which...
You mentioned 7. I'd say Charlie McMorrow from Coola has probably the best chance long term of breaking into the team.
Where does he play, Colm?
He could be midfield, centre back. That's where he played for Coola. So he's certainly an option. We mentioned one of the players who was there last year, Luke Brannock. I still think he will come strong in time. He was very, very good when he came on against Donegal. But you have to look back at Dublin's underage record. Compared to the previous 2 decades, when you'd always be talking about very, very good underage players breaking through. That's not the case now. Their record at Leinster under 20 level has been pretty poor for Dublin standards. Having won so many through the last decade and All-Ireland under 20 titles, they haven't won one since 2020 now. So that's a real concern. And it's not that the teams haven't been strong. Individually, the players have not stood out either. So this is probably expected. They lost their first 4 games in 2022 and were consequently relegated. But they still had Brian Fenton. They still had James McCarthy. They still had a high quality of players. That's diminished now.
Okay.
And now you're seeing a more ordinary group of Dublin players who will reorganise and will mount a strong challenge, certainly in the province, and maybe a little bit beyond later in the year. But I'd agree with Frank. I think they're in jeopardy now.
Okay. So are Dublin, and like predictions make fools of us all, are they a quarter-final, semi-final prospect this year? That's about it.
I always go back to, I think everybody's in agreement that Kerry are ahead of everyone. Donegal maybe the next best contender, but then there's that group of 6, 7, 8 teams, and I don't think Dublin are any worse. I think they're further down the tracks. I think in terms of coaching is what I'm touching on for the most part as well. I think they just need to catch up a little bit with that. But I think player-wise, I mean, nobody was talking about Joe Quigley 3 weeks ago. Plays against Monaghan, and it's like, whoa, they've uncovered another gem there. Like, they do have enough talent around the county. I agree with Colm. They've obviously not produced the same level of players as they did 10 years ago, but they have enough talent in the county and enough diverse options in the county that I think if they're not competing with that next bracket like Tyrone, Derry, even Armagh, then there's something seriously wrong there because they're not worse, and definitely squad wise they're not worse than those other teams.
I think the conundrum, and we won't know the answer, to be honest, until it comes to the All Ireland series, I think, is whether the 6 or 7 players who are all aged around 30 to 32, whether they still have the hunger is an easy word to use, but whether they have that drive and everything you need to go and win an All Ireland, because most of them have 5 or 6 All Irelands at this stage.
And that's probably on Brennan's mind as well. I know he said subsequently he regretted saying they were going to have to, get rid maybe of some of the older guard. We have to see if they still have it. But clearly, that betrayed something there. That is on his mind.
Well, they're as matters stand, they're very reliant on them because there aren't enough of these younger players who are emerging as there's a star of the future or the very near future. So, they need, Con is the obvious, he is their talisman. And if he stays fit, it's not a case of all bets are off, but you have to take Dublin seriously. But he's had quite a number of hamstring niggles in the last couple of years. Yeah. And, if his body doesn't hold up for when it really matters, you're looking around saying, who's going to dig Dublin out of this?
Did Dublin just drop the ball, given all the success at underage level, or is it just one of those cyclical things that can happen, or do we know for sure behind the scenes when it came to developing underage talent over the last decade?
I'm not so sure they dropped the ball. I think there is an element of it. I think you have to look at the generation that has just gone and view them through the lens of being just an exceptional bunch. That it was almost as if two groups of these players. You had the team that brought them to 2011. A lot of good players there. The likes of Paul Flynn, Bernard Brogan. And then you had that All-Ireland minor team that emerged into a very, very decent under-21 team under Jim Gavin and then Desi Farrell. You had those teams with Kieran Kilkenny, Brian Fenton, the 1993s as they were called, Jack McCaffrey, Paul Mannion. And then you had Con O'Callaghan and Brian Howard off at 2017 All-Ireland under-17 team. And just as maybe in the middle of the 6 in a row as it was, when the pace of the change in the personnel, Con O'Callaghan and Brian Howard were able to inject some impetus again to continue that. And now they're out on their own. That they're out on their own as effectively the leaders of the team, with maybe Davy Byrne and a few others, and the support cast behind just isn't what it is.
At the height of the success that was being talked about as a never-ending conveyor belt. This population, wait and you see. How many
quarter were we quartering them or having them? I think it was down to it was quarters at one stage.
I was giving them 6 to 8 All Irelands every decade. I think at one stage, this is the way it was going to go. So it's fascinating.
We might have to split Roscommon in two after this weekend, won't we? Actually, just on the Roscommon thing, I suppose we shouldn't, forget about them. Like, their league so far has been incredible, really, and it's also defied expectations of the locals as much as anyone else, because Roscommon have yo-yoed between Division 1 and 2 for the last decade, more or less, nearly non-stop. Yeah. And like they could and maybe should have got a result in Killarney the first day, and they've won 3 on the spin now. But I think the fascinating thing about this weekend is how they handle the expectation, because people now believe they're going to beat Dublin on Sunday. On form, you'd have to say they will, but Roscommon have a history of failing to live up to these expectations. They haven't beaten Dublin since 2002.
Wow.
And they have their St. Bridget's players to integrate back in, I think, from this weekend. So they have a very good keeper, Conor Carroll, and they have Rory Fallon, who everybody saw what he did in the club final. Conor Hand is another one who will most likely feature. So they've up to 6 or 7 players that can probably come into this team and add something to it.
And even without them back, I saw a great stat. I think it was Gaelic Statsman has compiled the top scorers from play in Division 1 to date. And 3 of the top 5 are Roscommon forwards. including Dermot Murtha at 1, and who is number 2 then? Dermot Murtha, Derek Craig, who's been in brilliant form this year. He's at number 2, and then Enda Smith at number 5.
Yeah.
So that's fair going.
Very good. Final word?
Yeah, not to move it back to Dublin just because I like picking at a carcass, but I think if Theo Clancy is there, if you have Howard, McMorrow, as Colm's talking about, O'Cofic Byrne, Kilkenny, you have Sean Bugler at 11, you have Conor Callahan at 14. Like that spine is as good as any.
You're buying Dublin stock.
I'm just like.
We're going too far here.
Like we're hot on Mayo. Do you know, for example, I don't think that's a worse spine than what Mayo have. It's not even that I'm buying their stock. I'm asking the question, like, what's going on there? Like, what is going on with Dublin?
You think it's a failing of training at the moment, or a failing of coaching?
Backside, like every which way, and yeah, the injuries don't help. And
I don't think they can afford to miss any of those players that you mentioned. I think that's the issue.
So
when they drop down, the radiant,
like a lot of.
But if they have
radiant is a lot.
If they have a good injury run this summer, say magically everyone was fit and going well.
I think they're around quarter final where they have been the last couple of years, depending on who they meet, of course, in a quarter final. I think that's probably where they are. They're sitting off the leading group who are behind Kerry at the moment.
Let's talk Kobe. How, by the way, has Kieran McDonald's son doesn't have to use his surname? I mean, this is the genius of calling him Kobe. I mean, it's unbelievable. So look, this is going to be a summer romance and not a marriage. And maybe it'll be all the more magical for it. We'll never forget the summer that Kobe played for Mayo, 2026.
No flaws.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, been married to Mayo for a long time. It can be rough. So Lee Keegan had a great article on the RT website where during COVID, when Kieran Mack was a selector with Mayo, he brought his 13-year-old son up to training. And Lee Keegan remembers thinking, this kid's kicking is, quote, incredible. I mean, no shock, obviously, but incredible. And then he recalled the club match last year where Kobe scored 10 points, and he said it's rare mid-game to take note of opposition players. He wrote, it was hard not to be mesmerised that evening. Now, Keegan's seen a few players in his time. It was hard not to be mesmerised. During the game, I remember being wrecked, thinking, fuck me, this kid is next level. We won the game in extra time, partly after deciding to double mark Kobe. He was 17. Oh my goodness. So, well, I mean, 19 points win against Monaghan, so he came on and scored 1-4 and 1 assist from 5 possessions. Looks to be the kind of prodigy that people suspected he might be at 18 years of age. So this is going to be what, a 3-month?
Well, he's in until the end of the year. He has committed to going to St Kilda later in the year. There are plenty in Mayo who would suggest we have got to do something to stop him from going.
What can we do?
And the more
what can we do? So we're not going to say it on air here.
There's a GoFundMe page.
It's funny how these things happen. Kieran Kilkenny, I think he went. Did he come back after a month or two? Or
after 6 weeks. He went out to Hawthorn. He had played in 2012, Frank, for Dublin against Mayo. Pat Gilroy brought him in, and they always felt that giving him a taste of that persuaded Kilkenny to stay on and commit to Dublin into 2013. I often think Pierce Hanley left Mayo and Kieran Kilkenny stayed with Dublin through the last decade. If you were to turn that around, how would it have come out? Dublin probably would have won a lot of All-Irelands anyway, but I'd be sure in some of those games that Mayo lost, Pierce Hanley could have made a difference. So it was a big exchange in that regard that Hanley left, and now the fear is, having lost Oisin Mullen, and what a player Mullen was for them in the 2020 All-Ireland final, 2021, what he could be now, and now Kobe's on the brink of going. He's obviously going to have this year. It's impossible to stop. It's obviously a discussion point within the GAA, some form of compensation, all of that, but these are amateur players. They're never going to sign on the dotted line to be part of a club or county. It's against the rules. It's not part of the game. He's free to go, obviously free to go. Looking at him last Sunday, and I haven't seen a lot of him, but one thing that struck me was, as he scored his goal, was his pace and athleticism. He's the type of player, the type of Mayo forward. I certainly don't think, potentially, and you're labelling a young man who's just turned 18 in December. He's the type of Mayo player. He mixes pace, athleticism and accuracy. And that combination hasn't been with Mayo in as long as I can remember.
Yeah, and listen, we got to be fair. As we record this, he's sitting through double maths.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's got he's a young man.
18 in
Yeah,
December.
we got to be fair here.
Keith Higgins pointed out at an event earlier in the week, he's his under-20 manager. He was playing a Connacht C final 2 weeks ago. Imagine coming across him in a Connacht C final.
Yeah,
I was up in Clonus and it was gas. He when he came on,
yeah.
Mayo had just gone 13 points ahead. And you're thinking, this is Andy Moore quietly introducing Kobe into a game that's over, essentially. And it'll all pass off peacefully. And, his debut is out of the way. And Kobe came on and he just decided, right, I'm going to go for it. And like his first 4 shots, he'd only 4 shots, all off his right foot. Each one in its own way was a thing of beauty. Like, and I'm not over-egging it there. But the view, we had a perfect view from the press box for his goal. And bad Monaghan turnover, quick pass into Kobe, takes it on the 45. And you say, oh, there's plenty of space there. But it wasn't like he's through on goal. And before you knew it, he was there pulling the trigger. And the view as the shot, it looked like it was probably slightly off the outside of the boot. It fizzed and it kind of was curling at the same time. And it was an absolutely fantastic score.
A little bit of a left to right on it.
A little bit, yeah.
Net before it hit the ground.
And I had to watch it back, and find it. It says when he took the ball between there and shooting from the just wide of the 13-metre line, he'd soloed the ball twice, but it wasn't an over carry. It was that quick. He moves really, really slickly.
He's a galloper.
Oh, he's a proper galloper.
Imagine him at 24. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the killer
18 to do that at a county level is frightening.
And he was also cheating a little bit positionally. He wasn't tracking. He was letting him go, and he was sort of being a killer up top. And
His
then
name's
the ball
Kobe.
was turned over.
He'll do what he wants.
But a defender will never leave him be again. And that's
true.
Be 18, come on your debut and do that. So I'm going to hang back here and see what happens.
You'd be wondering, has he the capacity, has he the ingredients to make it as an AFL player? And you'd be thinking, is he quick enough? Is he robust enough? He's a skillful, brilliant kicker of the ball, clearly. And then you see the goal and the acceleration. And you think, well, there's the ingredients for something in AFL.
Yeah, he could probably play anything. And Frank, what was Andy Moran saying afterwards?
He was kind of, you could see part of him was trying to say, I don't want to start talking this guy up too much. But his overall message was, look, Kobe, he was in playing that school C final. He came in for training on the Wednesday after and he says, I want to play or I'm ready to play. And he was just talking about his attitude is so good. We just want to give him his head, let him enjoy it. Yeah. And we'll enjoy him for as long as we have him. And he's there thinking hopefully more than 4 months or 5 months, whatever. But now the one caveat, and it has to be remarked, is Monaghan at that stage were a beaten docket. The game had gone away from them. They were a team with no confidence. They were caught between trying to push up to sort of take the game to Mayo when it was gone, and there was oceans of space left behind. But I know talking to Mayo people last summer or last autumn, when they were in the middle of that great club run, and people I know were saying, this is the best young player we've seen come out of Mayo for years. Do you know, he is that highly regarded in Mayo. So he definitely he is a potential X factor for Mayo this year that they haven't really had in the forward line for quite a while.
I sort of hope, for everyone's sake, his sake in particular, this does become a summer of Kobe, enjoy it, have fun, and you go with our good wishes, and doesn't turn into a, God, I can't walk down the street without someone saying to me, you got to stay. You got to do it for your county. You know what I mean? Like there could be an awful lot of pressure put on him to stay, and it could be slightly tricky for him. I hope there's kind of a, kid, go to Australia and make your fortune, and let's just have a great summer. And it's that kind of an atmosphere, as opposed to, like I said, constant pressure, almost constant. Would you think about changing your mind?
Yeah. No, the flip side is
go over to Castlebar and Westport and Ballinrobe and say that, Joe.
I know.
Stand on the corner of the street.
Lee Keegan, in that piece I mentioned, called it Kobe-mania in Mayo. Like, can you imagine? I mean, I haven't listened to Midwest, but I presume it's all they're talking about for 10 hours a day.
I looked at the Western People earlier in the week, and the first 7 pages, match coverage, broad match coverage, but every headline related to Kobe's debut. Teen Spirit was the front page cover of their impressive sports supplement, Teen Spirit, and a picture of him celebrating his goal. So,
Will they start a campaign? Will there be a Western People campaign?
A lot of these players go out though. Now, Pierce Hanley's obviously a rare example, but they come back all the better for it, and the county gains from it. Look at Derry. Anthony Tohol went out and came back like an animal. Like, he came
Conor
back
Glass.
a machine. Conor Glass came back as a professional and raised the standards across the board. But then for every Conor Glass, there's a Callum Brown who's still out there, and Derry would love to have him back. Kerry could talk about Ben Murphy, Mark O'Connor, but obviously they're winning anyway, so it doesn't matter as much. Mayo were just crying out for somebody like this to stay, so it's more intensified for him. But he could come back in 2-3 years' time with Oisin Mullen, and by God. But I shouldn't be talking like that. That's probably what you're worried about them for the poor fella.
A little bit. Just to round off, we'll come back to Division 2 when we finish. I do want to get to Congress. Donegal have a 100% record, the only Division 1 team who are 4 from 4. And in fairness, Dublin, Kerry, Mayo, Armagh are a nice set of scalps. Are they the most impressive league team you've seen thus far? Kerry, Jack O'Connor kind of conceded, we're not quite motoring the way we were last year.
I'm back to where I was, Joe, prior to the All-Ireland final, being really taken by Donegal's pace, power, athleticism, the movement of the ball. I covered 2 of their games. I thought they were really good against Mayo at times. Just the movement of Shane O'Donnell and Conor O'Donnell, Ryan McHugh.
You're a sucker for McGuinness, aren't you? You're
Just
hanging the man's every word.
The pace that they move the ball. But I still say Kerry are ahead of them based on last year's All-Ireland final.
On current form.
On current form. They are, to me, the biggest challengers. I thought the standard, I look back at the Donegal-Armagh game, I thought the standard was really high. I just thought the condition of the players, even deep into getting close to the 70th minute, and you must assume there's maybe nearly 80 minutes gone at that stage. And just the pace of movement of the ball out of defence from both teams was really, really strong. I think the game has moved on another level. Kerry are obviously out in front, and they have some of the best footballers, obviously the best by some distance, and they have that 2-point threat that no other team really carries, I think, at this stage. Even though Michael Langan has been banging them over, he's been in brilliant form. I think a big factor for Donegal is having Jason McGee back fit at midfield in recent games. He really showed it last Sunday. He was named man of the match by the television, scored 4 points, caught kickouts. Just a big presence, having him back. That's big. It'd be interesting to see what to do with Michael Murphy. He came off the bench against Mayo and Kerry, wasn't involved against Armagh, not surprisingly, last weekend. But they're looking in really good shape. I think it'd be very, very hard for them to avoid a league final at this stage, given the run-in that they have. They'd have to trip over completely not to get to a league final.
In no other sport would that phrase be used.
As much as they want to avoid this final.
I think they're screwed.
And
I
don't think they want to avoid it this year. Last year there was a fixtures clash. They're obviously out against Derry the week after. They actually have 5 weeks from the last round of the league to their first Ulster game.
So they might like it.
So that's a big difference, and I think they would like it. And if it was Kerry, they'd probably like that in Croke Park.
Oh, that would be good. Do you guys agree, Donegal, the form? Best
They are, and the worst thing you can do is cough up cheap ball to them, because you may not get it back for quite a while. Like, they've been pretty efficient in some of their earlier games in just ball retention, and they're always getting a shot off nearly at the end of it. But I mean, you always look at All Ireland champions through a different prism at this time of year, and Kerry more than anyone, because we're looking at the players who are being minded, who are only going to be coming back from long club campaigns, and we know what they can do if they all get it together in high summer. But it's another huge summer for Jack O'Connor, because in all his years and with all his successes, he's never done the back-to-back, and he's come close a couple of times. But I can envisage if Kerry were to win the All Ireland this year, he'd probably say this is the perfect time to bow out. If he was,
I think he'd be set for 3.
Oh, he'd probably do that too. But you know what I mean? I would say he'd love to do the of all things to win back-to-back.
What have you done for us lately, Jack? Never managed
Certainly
to
very
back-to-back.
much at his ease. I notice
very assured.
Jack. Very much at his ease. After the Donegal game, they'd lost by 4 points, but when they lost to Donegal 3 years earlier, I was in Ballybuffet for that game. They lost by a point, a late Patrick McBrearty free, and he certainly wasn't of the same mindset after that game. He was very relaxed after the Donegal defeat. He knows they're in the right place. Players to come back in. You're putting Tom O'Sullivan and Diarmuid O'Connor, who didn't start in the run into last year's All-Ireland final. You're putting those two players back into that Kerry team. That's frightening.
Well, it's funny. I mean, the end of the summer, when we know how it turns out for them, we will either look back at that and say, look, the assuredness of All-Ireland champions, he timed it beautifully. And if it doesn't go well for them, well, there was a bit of arrogance about Jack early on. You know what I mean? Where was the hunger? Like, that's the way it goes.
Interesting. Because Donegal obviously don't fear going at it right now, and they're happy to keep this level, and they are going to be playing the business end. So it's interesting, different approaches that you think you might need it. And like for 6 months between the All Ireland final and Jim McGuinness's press conference, then when he had that outburst about the Paddy Clifford question, like we've been talking about Paddy Clifford, and just very quietly, Jim McGuinness places Finbar Doherty at halfback this season.
Yeah.
And now shutting down the creative hubs out the pitch, which he wasn't doing. And now Ryan O'Donoghue, Oisín Connerty, Finbar Doherty's marking these players out the field, what he would have done with Paddy Clifford, or if they had played Kerry with Paddy Clifford playing, but what they will do this year, presumably. So they've addressed that. They look better. The O'Donnells and Kieran Moore half forward line. It's slick, it's powerful. The thing about Jim McGuinness is that the players look different. Like, you can look at a player 4 years ago and look at him now under Jim McGuinness, and they just look like a completely different entity. They look like a monster. Like, they physically look different, never mind everything else you're attaching to them. But Jason McGee's a great example of that as well. He looks like a giant now under McGuinness.
It's true. He's got something special, Jim McGuinness. Congress then. 25 motions to be discussed, and also Jarlath Burns' successor to be voted on Friday. You know, it's interesting on Burns' tenure. I think it's been a wildly popular presidency, and people quite like this dynamic president who's kind of an inspirational speaker and is a doer. FRC, an example, and like interventionist on Rory Gallagher, and so Wexford's Derek Kent seems to be the favourite to get the nod. There is Ger Ryan from Tipperary, and there is John Murphy from Sligo. Maybe I'm omitting somebody else. Is that?
No, that's it.
That's it. Do any of these strike you as kind of in the guise of a Jarlath Burns, or will there be a reversion to the mean when it comes to GAA presidencies?
I don't think there's been a president before, or there will be as strong in communication as Jarlath Burns. So I don't think that's the prototype for a presidency at all. Maybe Joe McDonagh way back in the 90s might have had a little bit of that. He was bilingual. He could switch very easily to Irish as well as Jarlath Burns can. But he's been a thoughtful president in many ways so far. He's obviously got good committees to go at difficult issues like football and now amateurism this weekend. So all around, he's presented very well. A hard act to follow, but I think any of those men would be different in that they would be more probably committee focused or boardroom focused decision making, things around that.
What I find
they couldn't expect to go out and to repeat the Jarlath Burns Act.
No, it's tough. What I find very strange about this role is that it seems to be so open to interpretation based on personality, as in, like with previous presidents, there's been a fair degree when various issues crop up of, but sure, it's just a figurehead. He's just, he just comes out and he, makes a few speeches and has chicken curry and shakes hands. Like and then Burns comes along and it's like, I'm running this ship is how it feels, rightly or wrongly. So like, does the next guy come along and just kind of, listen, it's all on Tom Ryan. I just kind of sit here. It's strange like that as a role.
You often got the impression that various presidential candidates over the years, they would kind of make big statements in the run-up to being elected. And then once that happened, it was okay, now I'm the ceremonial figurehead. I have to be neutral on everything. And like, there have been a few presidents in the last quarter century, I'll say, who haven't exactly inspired. Jarlath is definitely cut from a different cloth in terms of his skills with oratory. And like you mentioned, Joe McDonagh could sing as well as everything else, and he was quite willing to sing quite often. But I still think Jarlath would probably like to see one or two of these motions get through at the weekend. The FRC, I think, is his lasting legacy. That will never be taken away from him. And what has happened to football in the last year is, you can say largely down to Jim Gavin, but it was Jarlath's vision to begin with that something had to be done, and he addressed it very, very quickly. Because you don't have too long as a president.
Yeah.
You're 2 years in, and it's already, you're kind of not quite the lame duck, but the new guy has been elected, and everyone is talking about him.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting.
I think it's such a blessing that
Yeah,
Jarlath
yeah.
didn't get it in the end when Larry McCarthy got it, because he would have had to just weather that COVID storm, all the stuff that he's done. Like, he moved on to conversations that we've been having for 15 years about championship structures and about rules. Like, Jarlath Burns just came in and tackled all that head on, talking about amateurism head on.
Did anyone ever posit the thought, should we have a motion that allows a second term? Was that ever genuinely to let Burns have another run at it? Was that ever discussed
I never
informally?
recall it. I never recall that being seriously mooted. Maybe if the American president gets in for a third term, you can revert to that at next year's Congress.
I'd take a
Possibly.
special Congress, Joe, I think.
Yeah. So there are 25 motions. We won't go through them all, don't worry. GPA wanted to enshrine that the inter-county season lasts no more than 30 competitive weekends. Clontarf GAA want players to play 8 league or championship games with their club in a season to be eligible to play for their county team the following year. Dissent in hurling would see a free move forward 30 metres or up to the opponent's 20-metre line, so some manners on those hurlers is being discussed. Provincial senior football finals would go to a replay if they finish level after extra time. And interesting one from Fermanagh, reinstate the minor finals as the curtain raisers on All-Ireland final day. One of the great traditions, which I think people miss. And of course, Pádraig Duffy chaired a working group which has recommended moving the All-Ireland finals back couple of weeks, the football one to second week of August or just before, and the hurling one accordingly, with a gap week in between, almost to let the thing breathe, and a week of hurling in the sun and reflections on the final, and then a week of looking ahead to the football. Jarlath Burns said back in June, "I'm around the country all the time, clubs, counties, every single day of the week. The thing I get most debate on are the timings of the All-Ireland finals," he said at a launch in Offaly in June. So that proposal is going forward. Is there any sense that this will be passed, or do we know?
I don't think it'll pass. I think some of the bigger dual counties from Galway to Cork, Kerry aren't such a big dual county, but they've intimated they're against it. Clare are against it. I think Wexford are against it without knowing. And then this motion is tied to the 2-week extension for the All-Ireland football final and the week extension for the hurling final. And the trade-off is no pre-season competitions. That inter-county competition doesn't start until the 4th weekend in January. So that's the start of the league. But that doesn't wash too well, particularly in Ulster, where the McKenna Cup is coveted as a pretty big competition. And the general feeling in Ulster, I think, is it's not worth an extra week or two for the All-Ireland finals if we're going to lose the pre-season competitions. So because the vote is tied, they're likely to go against. I'm not even sure will it be put to a ballot. It could even be withdrawn. There could be a consensus taken. Okay. Maybe it will be put to a vote just to kill the issue, to say the All-Ireland finals will be played in July because clubs need their time in proper weather on better pitches in August and September to play their main games. And I think probably didn't help that attendances, or you were at the launch, that the money that has come in from inter-county activity soared by 6.6 million last year on the back of new football rules. But it shows you that there are interest in the games from January to July, and people have not stopped. The footfall hasn't stopped because the All-Ireland finals are played too soon.
Noteworthy, because I think the consensus is the players like it. But it's noteworthy Burns there in June saying it's the issue that most people anecdotally mention to him. Would that tally with what people say to you on the ground? Like, what does Joe Public think about...
Every time I talk to my father-in-law, he's talking about it, but he's of a generation that thinks the All-Ireland should still be in September. And there's lots of casual fans, TV armchair fans, who like the idea, would love the idea of it. I interviewed Jerry Grogan last week. It was interesting enough. Kerry man is the MC in Croke Park for years, but also Mr. Cumming a Munskull in Dublin. And he was talking about when Dublin won the All-Ireland in 2011, and his initial disappointment as a Kerry man was kind of almost washed away on the Monday as they were going through the schools and the whole excitement and what it generated in the schools in Dublin. And it was a huge PR thing for the GAA, you know, that was a big selling point for what it meant to the kids. But I says, well, Jerry, did you prefer that? He says, I was very against it at the minute, but I can see now why they've moved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the biggest problem the GAA have is that there aren't enough weeks in the year, like 52 weeks. They're just going to have to change that. Like, you know, that's always going to be a problem when you have so many layers that interact. But I just, in relation to the motion, I get the impression, like you mentioned, the Ulster Council. I mean, you've got John Prenti, a very influential figure in Connacht as well. He's been banging the FBD League drum for many years.
Okay.
And it looks like there's a coalition of the unwilling there who will, you know, vote this down.
See, it's all changed. When All-Ireland finals were in September, there was a lot less inter-county games.
Yeah.
A lot less even club games. Now everything is round robin. There's just such a swell of games that it's getting impossible to fit everything in.
You also had a culture there where county players were playing more with their clubs.
They had more
throughout the
time
county season.
because there was gaps there.
It was
Yeah.
more normalised. You had less county coaches saying you are not to be seen with your club until after we're done here. And I mean, if you think about it now, like a lot of county players are playing close to probably over 20 games, or like at least, you know, they're all playing over 10 anyway, competitive matches. But then obviously they're playing loads throughout, and then they're maybe playing 3 or 4 with their club at the end of it all. Like that's what's happening. And you're talking about extending that on for another 2 weeks. The Ulster one's interesting. I mean, Colm, you say, I mean, they like the McKenna Cup. I think a game of Tiddlywinks in Ulster would be very competitive as well, and they'd get up in arms about that. But I just don't know who we're trying to serve here. I think it is the TV argument that people just like having the season longer. And I get that. If I just think about me enjoying inter-county football, yeah, I like it being on for longer, but this is way better. And like the argument always comes back, and it's a load of rubbish, to be honest. It comes back that, but children are getting to see the games then later in the year, and then we're losing out to rugby or losing out to the Premier League. Like, children are going to the club matches then, and they're going in with the club, and they're still, like, I don't think anybody watches a game on TV, or very, very few people. A child at 5 watches a match on TV, and it's the first time they've heard of GAA, and thinks, now I want to play. They get brought into that way of life naturally. They go down to the club, they go down to training, they fight for a ball that's coming in from a club match behind the goals. Like, that's how it happens, and I don't think 2 weeks is going to affect that, really.
The other reality, Conán, is that managers, inter-county managers now have a level of control that wasn't there 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, if you remember, I think it was 2013, the year after Donegal won the All-Ireland, and there was 1 or 2 rounds of Donegal club matches fixed for maybe May time, and Donegal picked up several injuries, county players coming out of it, and McGuinness went ballistic with his own county board. Yeah. And it was kind of a running sore, I think, right through that season until they were eventually knocked out. And I think he insisted basically the following year that this wasn't going to happen again. So
the year they won the All-Ireland, Frank, in 2012, they literally played their championships off as a blitz in October. There was 4 games in 22 or 3 days for some players.
Yeah,
so that's the other consequence of
Yeah.
pushing it out and then just pushing the club games into a really, really small window.
Okay. Denied, not passed, I think is the consensus. And we'll see how the other ones go. There is going to be a protest, just to mention, on Saturday. I saw Brendan Devaney online, very impassioned about this. He's coming down from Donegal, 11 a.m. Of course, David Hickey and I suspect Colm O'Rourke maybe they're some of the big protagonists in this issue. 9 counties have passed motions calling for an end to the sponsorship links with Allianz. None of the motions have made it before Congress. The Ethics and Integrity Commission is generally being pointed to by the GAA executive, and so well, we'll see how big the protest is. I'm sure it will be uncomfortable for the GAA. PIMCO, when there were 2 rounds of Israeli bonds issued post 23, close to €1 billion worth of bonds, and well, the UN would say that this money has gone towards, amongst other things, the indiscriminate murder of children, starvation of children, has orphaned children. So it's not easy for the GAA, to say the very least, and there is a depth of feeling in the country, obviously. I know our Minister for Sport during the week talking about the Israel Republic of Ireland games said anyone talking about a boycott there is just looking for a headline. which I thought was a disgraceful comment. But I guess the decision's made, and generally, I mean, those in the GAA executive may not feel great about it, Colm, but it hasn't erupted into worst case scenario for them by any means.
No, it hasn't. I can't say it's not a really big talking point. I think if it's brought up, people would generally lean towards maybe a split from Alliance. Probably would if it's, but it's not something that's the doors are being beaten down for. That's my sense of it right now. That's not to say that they could develop. We'll see what kind of level of protest it is this weekend. You're right, it is an uncomfortable decision. There is an intractability about all sponsorships and all links with service providers and everything that find their way back to Israel. So that was the difficulty in making that decision. I'd agree it's uncomfortable. Probably even around the league finals, I would see it ramping up, perhaps. But the momentum for protests so far hasn't generated. I'm sure it will, and I'm sure as time goes on, it will increase.
Just to finish then, Frank, you were writing about Division 2 today, where Cork have 3 wins from 3. And are going very, very well. They have Derry at the weekend, they've Kildare and they've Tyrone. Tyrone are flirting with relegation. So what do you want to say about Division 2?
Well, we were talking about Division 1 for a long time there, and it's where the focus invariably is. But the most consequential division of all in the National Football League is Division 2, and it has been since the two-tier championship was introduced, because the level of peril here is huge. The 2 teams who are relegated into Division 3, unless they get to a provincial final, they will end up in the Tailteann Cup.
Just to let people know, so Offaly are likely down, so we can kind of consign Offaly. They have Louth on 4 points, you have Tyrone and Cavan on 3 each, and you have Cavan on 2. So they're all at risk.
They are. I mean, Tyrone are...
Kildare on 3, is it?
Kildare
Kildare
are well in the mix. Tyrone...
Kildare will be fine. Don't worry about Kildare. Right?
Is that what you left them, right?
Yeah, that's a silly point to make.
But then again, didn't Kildare win the Tailteann Cup, so they're okay.
They're okay. Yeah.
There we go.
You were right all along.
I forgive you.
But the Tyrone are flirting at the minute. It'll be a minor miracle. It'll be a major miracle if they don't beat Offaly at the weekend, despite their own poor form. Because, I mean, Offaly, they're struggling. They would have been struggling if they had a full hand. They've had awful injuries and absenteeism this spring. And their form graph is going that way. I mean, they lost to Derry by 23 points or something like that. But it'll be still an interesting contest in the sense that it's Mickey Hart against his old county. If he happened to turn them over this weekend, the reaction would be quite funny, all right. But Offaly are gone down. I think the match this weekend, it's Cavan are at home to... Is it Cavan at home to
Louth?
Yeah. That could have huge ramifications. Because just even with the remaining fixtures, like whoever loses there, could be seriously under pressure. I mean, Cavan looked nearly relegated, I think, at halftime against Kildare last weekend. They were level, had the win. They went 3 up, Kildare went 3 up, but Cavan coming back to win that game has given them renewed hope. So it's
nicely poised. 3 league games is not a big sample size to judge Cork on, but you described them as John Cleary's born-again rebels.
Well, it is 4. They've won 4 in the space.
Sorry, is it 4?
4, yeah.
The table I looked at was old. Okay, sorry, 4. Still a relatively small sample size, but are we liking what we're seeing down in Cork?
I saw them in the flesh in the first game of the league against Cavan. I was down to cover the Cork hurlers that day, but the football match was on first. And approaching the hour mark, I didn't see anything a whole lot different. They'd just gone 7 points down, and they looked gone. And their run coincided, I think, with all the Cork hurling fans coming into the ground, and suddenly there was a buzz for the last 10 minutes. And we talk about these momentum runs you get in football with the new rules. Cork hit that vein of form at just the right time and won it by a point. And they've had a really bad record in terms of getting off to bad league starts in the last 10 years. I mean, they'd won their first game last year against Meath, but for the most part, they've struggled on day one, and it leaves them playing catch-up from the off. That win, I think, was probably huge for them. The only thing is, they haven't played what you would maybe bar Meath until Meath at the weekend. They hadn't played the stronger teams in the division, and they still have trips to obviously Derry this Sunday, which is going to be very tough, and Tyrone on the last day, and Tyrone might need a result, for different reasons. So they're not guaranteed to go up by any means, but even just reading Paddy Kelly's column in the Examiner there, and like Paddy he's a very measured pundit. He doesn't go over the top or whatever, but he really was singing the praises of what they're doing as a team, not just the results, but they're more attack minded. They're playing 4 out and out forwards. They're going after games under the new rules, whereas previously they weren't. They were too passive.
They might have among the best midfield pairings in the game too. Frank Colm O'Callaghan and Ian Maguire, who might be suspended for the next 2 games. There's a possibility he's picking up a 2-match ban for what he is alleged to have been reported for. But those two are a really strong midfield pairing. You take Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers, that's a really established pairing. So they have that. And they have a really experienced defence too. Some defenders that have survived in the company in the old game with David Clifford, Sean Meehan and Maurice Shanley, Daniel O'Mahony. So they have those players, really experienced. They've Stephen Sherlock back as well. And very, very few debutants this year compared to other years. So it's a very settled operation, Cork, and they're on course. I don't think they'll beat Derry this weekend. I think they'll be going to Tyrone. They're well insulated by last weekend's result if there's a head-to-head between themselves and Meath, obviously on 10 points, which could play out. That will bring them up. I think Cork are well placed to get promoted now.
Okay. And Conán, final word, Derry?
Well, you tried to pour...
Can anyone stop them?
You tried to pour cold water when I told you that Kobe-mania is the man.
Yes.
And Derry, and he has the track record, and he has the legacy with Derry.
So this is the man who, in the wake of the Gallagher situation, took over, and they ran at Kerry and gave a really kind of thrilling account of themselves. And then he didn't want the job.
Yeah.
And now he's back.
Went to Down, did a great job as a coach there.
So are we seeing like echoes of what we saw that day against Kerry, or are the building blocks in place, or what are you seeing?
You're seeing it, yeah. They had a bad day out against Meath at Crew Park, first game. I believe a hangover from previous regimes. The players were static. All the stuff we're talking about Dublin now, and this is why I think it can change, because I know Kobe-mania is a good coach. I know he's got a great coaching team there, but Derry suddenly look more dynamic. And the key thing is that they have men taking men on. Like it's 11v11. If you take a man on, it's all sorts of chaos now. And just what Colm said there about the idea of having to attack a team, like that's what you have to do in this game now. Like it's never done. You can't close a game out. You can't shut up shop. You have to keep attacking. And Derry learned that the hard way under Paddy Tally, where they actually were quite good in a lot of games, and they just never got over the line because teams will always get another chance, and you have to keep scoring until the game's over.
And do you think they're a happier camp as well? Because you got the vibe in the last couple of years that just they weren't a happy group of players.
And I think they like Kobe-mania. Yeah, I think there's a bit more confidence. Yeah, I think, like, for instance, if that Meath performance had have happened under the last 2 regimes, it might have just shaken them a little bit more, which is what we did see when they had bad results or bad performances. They seemed to lose confidence a lot quicker, whereas Kobe-mania is the only link. I talked before about Rory Gallagher getting credit for taking Derry from Division 4 to 1. He was there at Division 3. Kobe-mania was there at Division 4 and took them the whole way up. He was with them for 5 years. The players trust him, they like him, and he's got them playing with a bit of verve again. Now Derry, very much like Dublin, they have to have a clean bill of health all year round to have any chance of competing. They don't have a deep enough squad, still have issues in terms of, real electric forwards joining Shane McGuigan. But they have a manager who's encouraging players to take men on. They have a manager who's setting them up in the right areas and moving teams around. Maybe you are going to pour cold water on me right now. But
it makes Cork Derry interesting this week.
Yeah, and when they beat Kildare, that was a cracking game. They went down to 12 men at one stage. They were away from home. They were up against it. And they turned it around. They were 5 points down at one stage, got 2 goals, got back in front. They got like a standing ovation from the away fans afterwards. That was only their second win in a year and a half. That's how much it meant to the people then. It was like, oh, this is the team that we've been recognising. Like, and cheered them all off, and I'd say that did the world of good for the players.
Okay.
And they went and hammered awfully off the back of it. I can hear myself. I know I'm getting carried away a little bit.
As a matter of interest, does everyone want the minor finals back before the senior and all-out final day? you want that rhythm again? Or?
Well, heart and head, Joe. Yes, for heart, but head, no, because the crowds that have been at All Ireland minor hurling finals in the last 4 years since 2022 down in Thurles and Nolan Park have been anything from between 12 to 20,000, and even more when it was paired with an under 20 final. Cork were in the under 20 and minor final in 23, so that went up to nearly 30,000. So the opportunity for all of those people to go and see their team competing in an All Ireland final, be it a minor final, they wouldn't get those tickets, and if they did, they'd pay £100 for them in Croke Park. So it's a good opportunity to get more people in to see those games. Yes, you'd like it because the All Ireland final showpiece is missing something. The game starts at 3:30 and there's a long run in there and it's not really working. But do I have a solution? I don't have a solution. The minor final or some final, yes, but as a standalone fixture has worked.
The GAA is one great collection of, well, obviously I would like this, but logically we can't, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's almost an answer to every question.
No more than the Clontarf motion with Noel McCaffrey. Everybody agrees, what a great motion in principle to get a club player to play 8 games, an inter-county player to play 8 games in a year with his club to qualify him for the following year. And everybody says, that's a great way. But we can't do it. We can't find a way to get the space, to get the time to do that. And it does tie it down and it does bring the club player or the inter-county player back closer to it. It enshrines it in rule, but nobody can see an opportunity, or very few can see an opportunity for the fixtures to work so they can align.
Okay. Gents, that was great. Quick round the houses on the world of Gaelic football. Colm Keys, Frank Roche, Conán Doherty. Enjoy the weekend, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.